Yo, what is poppin', my guys? It is your boy Ashley, and today we are bringing you our review of every mon we used during the season 3 of the IBA. So basically, I've divided the Pokemon I use into 3 categories. We have the offensive, the defensive, and the others. So first of all, we're going to kick off with offensive, then we'll go into defensive, then we'll go into the others. Now, something I'll say that how I rank these is basically just of how my expectations were, not only before the season but during the season. Like, you know, some of these Pokemon I had a bad week with and it felt like I could never get back in the rhythm with them, and then some of them, once I kind of figured out the key to using them, really made the biggest difference for my team. And I think that's definitely something that I tried to look at when I was doing this list. Pretty much all of these Pokemon I really like. Even, I would say, even like a lot of the Pokemon in the others category, I still would draft again, but there are definitely some duds on the squad. And if you're watching this video, I assume you've seen all of our other videos at this point, and you'll know that we did end the season with a 6-6 record, barely missing playoffs, but that was not for fault of the team, because the team had some really great things working for it. And we'll go ahead and talk about the offensive things now. So we're going to start off with number 4, which is Hoopa Unbound. So the reason I put Hoopa Unbound at number 4 on the offensive list is just because I misused it for a lot of the season. Once I started experimenting with different sets and not relying on passing speed from Scolipede into the Hoopa. Damn. And didn't focus on passing speed into the Hoopa, then I really saw its potential a lot more. Obviously, that base 160 and 170 special attack and special attack respectively is absolutely insane. I mean, there's really not a whole lot that can stand up to it, and with its base 80 speed, you can bring it in on some walls that typically are not going to be switching, and really just start to lay down the hurt on the team, and basically making them pick to sack them on during the mid and end game if played right. So that's definitely a Pokemon that I would like to draft again. I'm not sure if I will, just because I've used it in 2 leagues recently, and I'm trying to branch out and use some different types of Pokemon, but I definitely am really big on this Pokemon, and it gets the number 4 spot only because I had a lot of other offensive Pokemon on this team that I really loved. And we'll talk about the next one, which is number 3 offensive Pokemon, Infernape. Now, this Pokemon, pretty much, the reason I have it at number 3 is because the top 2 really impressed me, and this thing pretty much did exactly what I thought it would do at base 108 speed with 104 attack and special attack. Oh, I'm sorry, hold on. We'll flip back to the Hoopa slot real quick, just to say that I went 5 and 7 with this Pokemon. You'll see that on the screen. I didn't mention it, but I forgot that I will be doing that. It's 5 and 7, so that's not great, but that's definitely from me misplaying. I think it was 0 and 4 at one point or something like that. So bringing it back up to 5 and 7 was pretty nice. And there's a couple of weeks like against Noivern, where had we correctly done our speed IVs, we could have gotten more kills with that and put that closer to 7 and 7 or possibly 8 and 7. So not even including any of the other games earlier on in the season. So definitely misused by me. Not a bad Pokemon in general, but I think the U-turn weakness and everything getting U-turn really kind of shuts this Pokemon down. Sorry. So now we'll go back to talking about Infernape. I went 5 and 5 with Infernape. I think it's a great Pokemon. It's got a great move pool. It's got the ability to be special or physical. I think using it as a Z-move user was great. I really have nothing to complain about with Infernape. I think I misused it occasionally, definitely in my last game, just forgetting that it was Choice Scarfed. But in general, anytime this Pokemon fell short was because I had put it in a position where it could not flourish and did not play it correctly. So no complaints whatsoever about Infernape. You should definitely pick this Pokemon up. It is a fantastic Pokemon. So next up, I'm just going to search right here. Sorry, I'll cut this out. So next up, the Pokemon that I have on this list is none other than Mega Aerodactyl. So this thing is an absolute nightmare to face against. It is so fast. It is 150 speed. Oof, that 135 attack is fantastic. The coverage is okay. With Tough Claws, it's got some stuff that it can work with. But I think that once I started using this Pokemon correctly, it really, really became to flourish. Same thing as Hoopa, it is 5 and 7, but this Pokemon put in so much work for me during the season. Sometimes being defensive, sometimes setting up rocks, sometimes defogging, but most of the time just blowing holes through the opposing team. And really cannot recommend this Pokemon highly enough. Basically, with a Pokemon this fast, you can always outspeed the fastest non-choice thing on their team. There is no worrying about being outsped. This thing outspeeds everything. It forces so many switches, and with access to Pursuit, if you play the chip game correctly, this thing can pretty much come in and nab a kill whenever it wants to. I am such a huge fan of this Pokemon, and the only reason it lands at number 2 on the list is because it gets behind the season MVP, Scolipede. Everybody, big claps for Scolipede. Everybody clap your hands together. This Pokemon did everything I wanted it to and more. I won games with Speed Pass. I won games with just speed boosting and Swords Dancing. I won games with speed boosting and not Swords Dancing. This thing is an absolute menace, and there are so many sets that I didn't even get the chance to utilize. Like, for example, I know that there's the Sub Endeavor set with Toxic Spikes and all sorts of crazy stuff like that, and let me tell you, man, I cannot recommend this Pokemon highly enough. A lot of the times I made it a Z user, and I think making it a Z user is a big bonus because it's a little easier to wall against if it's not a Z user. There's pretty much every time I swept with this Pokemon, it was because a Z move that I used secured a kill on something that I would not otherwise have gotten to secure the kill on, or even as simple as this Pokemon has a lot of moves that miss, like Mega Horn and Rock Slide, and just ensuring that you can hit those moves when you need to with the Z move is invaluable. So definitely, if you're going to pick up Scolipede and you have the option, I would suggest making it a Z move user. I went 14 and 6 with it, which is the best I've ever done with any Pokemon. It was number 5 on the kill leaders for the season, which is super dope. Super dope. I was really excited to have a Pokemon in the top 5. That was kind of a goal of mine this season that I didn't really think was possible, but Scolipede really pulled through for me, and it was definitely the MVP of this team. Just even if you don't have the ability to pass speed, utilizing that speed yourself can be disgusting depending on what kind of set you want to bring. And in its base 110 and its base 112, it can force switches even without the speed boost because it just outspeeds so much. All those base 100s it can outspeed and still go adamant. I'm fairly certain. I can't remember exactly, but still, I guess I've talked enough about this Pokemon. But man, what a great addition to the team, and I'm super happy to have had Scolipede this season with its ridiculous 14 and 6 kill death ratio. I don't know what it's called. It's not ratio, it's differential. Yeah, it's got a plus. It was +8, so that's definitely better than my whole team did. So anyway, we're gonna move on to the defensive. Now, number 4 is Whimsicott. I did not get to use this Pokemon a whole lot. I picked it up late in the season, and it didn't have that great of a matchup versus certain teams, but I definitely liked a lot of the things it brought to the table. It's a little bit bulkier than it looks on paper with its stats. But it tanked hits a little bit better than I thought it would, and access to Prankster for things like Encore is fantastic for taking down opponents. If I would forward off with this Whimsicott, I don't know if I could have beaten Ben with his Thunderous. Being able to Encore that into certain moves and then set up was invaluable in that win. I think this Pokemon is fantastic. It only gets the number 4 slot because I was definitely super impressed with all the Pokemon I have above it, and I also think it has a lot of utility for things that I didn't particularly use it for, such as Chlorophyll, which is a really nice one. It could pair well with something like Charizard as a sweeper. It doesn't get great attack or special attack, but I think it might get Nasty Plot. There's a possibility, I'm not sure, but anyway, this thing, I like this Pokemon a lot. It also has access to Infiltrator as well, to get behind those subs, because subs, that's one thing I realized this season, people like subs in Draft League, and I know why, because if you can force a switch and get behind a sub, you can do a lot of damage, especially if it's on a fast Pokemon. But this thing is a great disruptor for any kind of setup tactics, and I think it's a great asset to any team. So next up, we have Swampert. So I really like Swampert. I've had this Pokemon before, and I liked it alright. I had it this time, and I got a little bit better advice from my front office on how to use it, and it was fantastic for me. Having that, it has such a nice attack stat, but I usually find myself running it special for Scald, but because it's defensive in nature for me. I mean, base 100 HP with 90 defense and special defense is so nice because you can make it specially bulky, or you can make it offensively bulky if you needed to, or you can even mix and match depending on the threats that you need to wall. It's super nice with stuff like Roar, Stealth Rocks. It's a great rock setter. Its one weakness to grass is kind of bad, but having this on your team also forces your opponent to run HP grass if they want to try and deal with it and they don't have a strong grass type. And forcing 4 times weakness choices, like if you have a mon that's 4 times weak to ice and a mon that's 4 times weak to grass, they have to make that decision and pick one, whereas if you only have one 4 times weakness, it's really easy to slap a hidden power on that. So I think that this Pokemon has a lot of defensive utility, a little bit of mind games. Damp is a great ability for things that like to run Explosion. I did have a couple of games where I ran into people running Explosion. I didn't have Swampert to use against them, but it would have been nice as an option. I brought it Damp as a Blacephalon check in case you wanted to run something like Mind Blown. And also, if you don't want to run Damp because your opponent is not going to boom on you, Torrent is a great ability as well, just to get off some big damage right at the end. So definitely love Swampert. Definitely will probably end up drafting it again in the future because I like the lower tier waters a lot more than I like the higher tier waters. I know the higher tier waters are very powerful, but something about all the lower tier waters are just ones that I identify with. I love Swampert as a Pokemon. It was one of the, I think it was on my second playthrough of Sapphire, I had Swampert, or I guess I played it on Ruby. I don't know, it's a weird story. I played it on 2 different versions, and the first one I had Blaziken, second one I tried Swampert, and it's still a Pokemon close to my heart today. Anyway, we'll go on and talk about our number 2 defensive Pokemon, and that is Gliscor. Now Gliscor was nice. I like Gliscor a lot. It went 2 and 4, but that's because I mostly brought it in a defensive capacity. There were a couple weeks where I debated bringing Double Dance, but I typically ended up bringing it defensively because it checks so many different Pokemon in the Draft League meta, and its defensive typing is pretty nice. I mean, obviously people have the option to run the Hidden Power, and some Pokemon, like it does a lot better against physical Pokemon, obviously, with its high defense and the ability to, roost up with Poison Heal. I mean, it is so fat. And it's got good, just being able to spam Earthquake as a defensive Pokemon is really, really nice. And this thing is pretty much an asset in every single match I brought it. Having Defog with Poison Heal now is amazing. If Gliscor was worth picking up before, now there's no reason not to. Defog Gliscor is fantastic. I utilized it many a time. It saved my game many a time. And I cannot recommend this Pokemon enough. It is such a dope Pokemon. It's got so many different setup moves. If you want to run it offensively, it is a defensive powerhouse. It just looks really cool. You can't go wrong picking Gliscor, but I had to give the number 1 spot to my boy Electros. Electros went above and beyond anything I could have imagined for this season, honestly. I mean, he went 4 and 6, so 4 kills is not bad for this Pokemon. I mean, but he's the highest ranking kill person that isn't an offensive Pokemon. Oh, I'm sorry. No, he went 4 and 8 because I did use him in a defensive capacity a lot, and I can say he did very, very well. With Volt Switch and U-Turn, you have multiple options to kind of get a pivot in, and that's exactly what this thing does. This thing has so few weaknesses, it literally just comes in, eats a hit that does usually nothing depending on how you have it invested, and then U-turns or Volt Switches out into slow Volt Switch or U-turns out, which is really, really nice. And it has the coverage moves to scare anything out. I mean, it's got grass moves, it's got ice. No, it doesn't have ice moves. I think it just has HP Ice, but it's got grass moves, fire moves, it's got Flamethrower, it's got Thunderbolt, Fire Punch. You can run this thing physical or special. It is such a versatile Pokemon. You could pretty much find a reason to bring this thing every single week, and I typically found myself bringing it a lot. It really brought a ton to the team, and it is easily a Pokemon I will be drafting again. I typically ran it with the Assault Vest. Almost always ran it with the Assault Vest just because that is such a good item for this Pokemon. But nothing else to say about Electros. It is fantastic. You should definitely try it out. Its coverage is insane. Its ability to give you a slow pivot on almost any Pokemon your opponent's going to bring is amazing. and it helps a lot with getting the momentum on your side for your team. So again, I recommend Electros. Now here for the others, we're going to count down from the best to the worst, because I figured we could end this on what I thought was the absolute worst Pokemon that I used. And we are going to talk about Tentacruel first, because it was my favorite of the others. The only reason it wasn't on the defensive list is because I had 4 offensive ones and I wanted to keep the list numbers even for offensive and defensive. Otherwise, this probably would have been, or definitely would have been, in the number 5 spot. I misused it a little bit. It's not as bulky on the defensive side as I would have liked to have thought. I mean, obviously that was just me being dumb, because the stats are all there. You can see that it's not very bulky on the defensive side, but you know, that's all my mistakes. It's very great on the special side. It has a good set of abilities to kind of take advantage of different Pokemon. Rain Dish is nice if you're facing a rain team. It didn't happen for me, but you know, it's always there. Clear Body is really nice for getting rid of sticky webs and stuff like that. Liquid Ooze is fantastic if you're facing something like a Mega Venusaur or a Comfey or anything like that, because you can sap up that Leaf Seed and just start sapping strength from your opponent because of that amazing Liquid Ooze ability, as well as coming in on Giga Drains and just, you know, etc, etc. You get how it goes. Having this as a rapid spinner, especially with Clear Body, as I said, is absolutely fantastic. It's got decent offensive options. It's only got 70 attack and 80 special attack, but it's got Scald, so that's pretty much anything you could ask for in a water type. You could tell that I like Swampert more, but this Pokemon definitely has its place. I just don't think it fit on my team as well as Swampert did, especially since they were both late season additions to the team. So I don't think that I'm not gonna say I will never draft Tentacruel again, but I definitely will think more if I'm going to draft it. This was an addition to the team, and I could definitely see myself picking it up in free agency in the future if the water type that I draft isn't working out for me, because I'm comfortable with it. I know how it works now, but I'm not sure if I'll be drafting it again anytime soon in the future. Now, underneath that, I put Comfey. Now, if you guys know me, you know I love Comfey. Comfey is an awesome Pokemon. The only reason it's so low is because it did not do much for me in the IBA. That's really the only thing. It just didn't have a great matchup against a lot of my opponents. It's a fantastic Pokemon. I'm definitely going to be drafting this one Pokemon again, so that might be confusing to you guys since I put Tentacruel above it on the list, but this is a list about how they performed for me in the IBA. So this Pokemon unfortunately did not do that great for me this season. I misplayed with it a little bit. Obviously, that's the story with a lot of these Pokemon that are lower down on the list. I wasn't comfortable using it in the capacity I was using it, but I do love this Pokemon. I think it has fantastic abilities to just. This is the one thing that really knocks it down. Also, is that I thought it had Wish when I picked it up for this team, and it does not have Wish. So that is no bueno. But having the ability to defog, you can pass Calm Mind. No, I'm sorry, it does not have Baton Pass either. That's another thing I was disappointed about. But you can Calm Mind up with this Pokemon and essentially just run Train. They're typically only going to have one Fairy. If you want to run this set, your opponent will typically have one Fairy Resist, and you can always fill that up with a Hidden Power or one of its multiple coverage moves. So this Pokemon is great in the offensive position. It's pretty solid in the defensive position. Its HP is really lacking, but its defense and special defense are definitely passable. Having it at base 100 is really, really nice. But yeah, I mean, that's really all I have to say. Triage is a great ability. Natural Cure is great if you're not going to be sweeping with it, if you're just going to be walling with it, because that way they can toxic you or do whatever and you can just bounce. And I'm not exactly sure what Flower Veil does, but I think it's pointless. So that's all we'll have to say about Comfey, and we'll move on to the next Pokemon on the list, which is Slowking. So Slowking, unfortunately, just didn't really fit this team very well. Swampert and Tentacruel both did a much better job of filling the water type role on this team. When I picked this Pokemon up, I had high hopes for it, but those hopes quickly disappeared when I actually used it, and it wasn't really doing what I wanted to. It's not a bad Pokemon, but I don't think I'll personally draft it again just because it doesn't function in the way that I would like it to. And that's probably just because, again, I'm misusing it, but I'm definitely going to take a break from Slowking, and I don't know if I'll pick up Slowbro. These are another Pokemon that if I saw them on the waivers and I needed to switch up for my water types and wanted something more comfortable, then yeah, I could definitely see myself picking it up. Regenerator is fantastic. It does have the option to run Trick Room and start laying off big hits on your opponent, because 100 special attack isn't bad, and it does get access to Nasty Plot, but I just felt like everything I wanted to do with this Slowking required so much setup that I could only really realistically bring it in the defensive standpoint, and the defensive standpoint didn't fit well with my team. I did not need a water and psychic type special wall for this team. I needed a grass type special wall, or maybe like a normal type special wall or something like that. But having a special wall that's weak to a lot of the same things that a good portion of my Pokemon are, I don't know, it just didn't fit well with the team, and not a bad Pokemon, but definitely not my favorite. So next up, we'll move to number 4 on the list, which is Shaman. I really don't like the base 100 all-around Pokemon. I know they're really good. Shaman was perfectly fine. It didn't do anything badly. It just didn't do anything amazingly either. It really seemed to lack in a lot of the departments that I felt like I wanted it to, and that's simply due to the base 100 stats. I never really have been a fan. I've used Jirachi and a couple of other Pokemon that I can't think of off the top of my head. I think the only base 100 Pokemon I could see myself drafting anytime in the future is going to be Mew, because it just has so many options that you can do a lot of different things with that Pokemon. But I don't think I'll draft Shaman again. It's a solid grass type. I think that I think it definitely deserves to be in tier 3, but I think it's on the very, very low side of tier 3, and I would just much rather pick up something lower. And that's really all I have to say about Shaman. Next up, we have probably the most disappointing one on this whole list, because I really wanted this Pokemon to do well for me. We have Escavalier. I'm a little depressed. I really like the design of this Pokemon. I think the typing is really cool, other than being absolutely obliterated by fire types. The stats, while not great, are not horrible. I mean, for what it is, just a really slow, hard-hitting Pokemon, the stats are really solid, with 105 defense, 105 special, 70 HP, 135 attack, and that 20 speed. I mean, this seemed like it was going to be a great Trick Room option for me, as well as just a Pokemon that's going to obliterate people and just really, really punish switches with things like Pursuit, punish switch ends with things like Knockoff and huge boosted Mega Horns and Iron Heads. But when it came down to it, the fire thing really, really screwed me. Like, I think this Pokemon would have been a lot better if I had been able to run it with Swampert to force that, 50-50 on hidden powers. But man, this thing just got destroyed way too often. It never really got to do the things that I wanted it to do. The moves that it had were not the greatest. Like, Mega Horn is nice, but having it miss really sucks, which it seems to do a lot. I think it has Exazor too, but I don't know. It just really felt like it was lacking in the move department. It did not have the coverage that I would have liked in order to punish the switches that it does sometimes create. And I don't know. Probably will never draft this Pokemon again. Maybe might pick it up if I'm ever bored in a league and just want something that's going to hit hard and have fun with. But I don't know, man. Just was not impressed with this Cavalier. And finally, we have the absolute worst Pokemon I used this season, and that was Komala. The only thing this did well was sit in front of an Alolan Ninetales and a Blastophalion. That's it. That's all it did. And it was wearing the Assault Vest. Without the Assault Vest, it probably couldn't have even done that. And there was nothing it could do back to them, really. I don't know. This Pokemon had a lot going for it. Obviously, not being able to be status as a quote-unquote wall is really nice. Its defensive and special stats are not. If there was a physical version of the Assault Vest, I think this Pokemon could do pretty solid. I think it would be alright. But since there isn't, it's not. It's not a great spinner. It doesn't force any switches. This Pokemon has never forced a switch in its entire life. There's no way. It does get U-turn, which is nice, but it also falls over to any attack, so it's not going to U-turn on those switches. It's not going to U-turn on the Pokemon in front of it. Like, I don't know. Just not a great Pokemon at all. It seemed like it had a lot going for it, but it just doesn't, and I cannot recommend any other Pokemon less than I can recommend Komala at this point in time, other than Togetic, but we'll talk about that when we do the IBL recap. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. I actually have no idea how long this video is because I had stats pulled up. 25 minutes, that's a long ass time. Anyway, I hope you guys will enjoy, or didn't enjoy, whatever. Drop a like, comment, subscribe if you did. Let me know what you guys think about the team. Let me know I'm an idiot for putting A Pokemon under B Pokemon, etc., etc. And I'll see you guys next time. Peace.